The Coalition's capital world, Vareth, hadn't known conflict in over 4 centuries. It was where invasions were planned, not suffered, where fleets launched, not landed. Its skies glistened with orbital rings, drone walls, and the soft blue shimmer of prestige shielding. Untouchable. Until today. Admiral Thalavar stood in the central command spire, watching a dozen analysts scramble below him, drowning in data anomalies. "What do you mean something is inside our orbital perimeter?" He barked. No one responded. One officer finally whispered, "Sir, we didn't detect entry. It just appeared." Thalavar's long neck twitched as his pupils narrowed. Nothing just appears. And then the room dimmed. The lights stayed on, but something about them, something in the spectrum shifted. One analyst gasped. "Skylight stations are rotating." Without command. "What?" Thalavar spun toward the HOLO map. Every orbital satellite had begun to tilt, facing one direction. Not random. Not glitched. Intentional. As if the sky itself had turned its eyes to something behind it. Then, a shadow passed across the Varethian sun. Not an eclipse. Not a ship. Something between the two, and the temperature dropped by 6 degrees. In under 30 seconds. An audio feed kicked in. Not requested. The voice was calm, measured. Varith was not on the target list. Thalavar froze. "But your fleet's actions have consequences." "Who is this?" he shouted. The voice ignored him. "You watched. You advised. You trained them. You counted yourself innocent." Then silence. No explosion. No threat. Just that voice. And then movement. Above the capital sky. Space rippled. No flash. No glow. Just a soft distortion. And then they saw it. The ship had no name, but it bore the pattern of Terran blackglass lightless armor. Reflective only when the stars begged for answers. It rotated once, not to attack, but to look back. The ship sent no I.D. No frequencies, just one gravity pulse. It pushed down gently on the Varethian surface, just enough to be noticed. Every tower on the planet tilted by 1 degree. Every satellite reoriented. Every line of code updated to acknowledge a new center of mass. As if the entire planet had bowed without meaning to. Then the ship vanished. No trace. No warp trail. No radiation. Just gone. Thalevar didn't breathe for several seconds. Then, shakily, "How many do they have?" His aide replied without looking up. "We don't know." He whispered, "That's the problem." Far from Vareth, buried beneath what once was a moon mining colony, the torchbearer drifted inside a hollowed crust of ironstone. No light touched it. No radar swept it. It simply was. Inside, Commander Reyes stared at a growing list of intercepted transmissions from across the galaxy. New rumors. New speculation. Even gods don't move like this. One voice claimed, "I saw one split a cruiser in half without firing." Another whispered, "A child drew its shape in the dirt 3 triangles within a black circle." No one taught her that symbol. They were calling it the last pattern now. Not a weapon. Not a fleet. Myth forming in real time. "Does this worry you?" Reyes asked. A voice behind her answered, "No." It wasn't human. It wasn't AI. It was ship mind. 9. The living interface of the UN-SIS torchbearer. A hybrid consciousness built from lost battle logs, grief code, and instinct. She turned toward it. "You feel no fear?" "I feel logic." "And what does logic say?" "Fear is late to this conversation." Meanwhile, at a secret diplomatic meeting between 5 neutral systems, the topic was no longer negotiation. It was survival. A Rixari trade baron leaned forward. "I don't care what anyone says. If we send ships to Earth, they won't respond." A diplomat from the Vorn Unity countered, "They already responded. The question is, did they finish? A silence followed. Then the oldest among them, a blind, Relari monk, spoke without raising his head. They don't strike back, they strike. Forward. A moment of dread passed through the room. The monk continued slowly. They do not conquer. They correct. And they don't do it for victory. They do it for memory. On board the Unsdirge, Shipmine 7 observed a swarm of Coalition distress beacons blinking across empty space. None were answered, because there was no one left to answer. The dirge did not deviate from its path. It had a list. It had names. It had coordinates. It had silence. And that was enough. On Earth. Deep in the Arctic command node, Rhea stood before a silent console. No fanfare. No applause. Just one phrase scrolling gently across the top of the screen. Estimated enemy strength ratio at first strike, 100-1. A moment later, a second line appeared, human casualty count, 0. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just whispered one word, balance. In the ruins of a forgotten outpost in Sector 4 Delta, the last surviving officer of the original invasion force stumbled through ash and glass. He collapsed near a bent console and activated a black box recorder. His voice shook as he began. This is Admiral Vex, or what's left of him. He coughed. You need to understand something. We had everything. Firepower, speed, numbers. We had 10,000 ships. They had ... I don't even know. He looked up at the dead sky. They didn't fight. They didn't scream. They didn't run. He swallowed hard. They just arrived. And then his voice dropped to a whisper. We outnumbered them 100-1 and still lost everything. The feed cut. And silence followed. The Coalition Central Archive, buried beneath the old moon of Trinax, was never meant to be accessed mid-conflict. It was a vault of pride of legacy. It held the war trophies, the strategy logs, the conquest maps of 5,000 worlds. It was supposed to outlive every species, but now it was burning. The emergency lights blinked in and out as 2 surviving officers of the outer fleet rushed through the central corridor, dragging a half-melted signal console between them. This is the only one still transmitting, one hissed. And who's left to hear it? The other snapped. They both stopped when they reached the primary archive vault. The security doors had been peeled open, not blasted, not breached. Peeled, like someone with impossible precision had folded the metal inward with bare hands. Inside, everything was gone. Not destroyed. Not looted. Just gone. And carved into the final empty shelf, deep enough to melt the alloy, were 7 words. This was not silence. It was warning. The younger officer trembled. We were the ones who screamed first. The older one whispered, and they remembered every echo. Back on Earth, the Arctic command base sat in the quietest state it had known in decades. There were no more alerts, no red banners, no surveillance feeds pinging live threats. Only a single blue dot blinked on the command map, UN's vigilant. The last ship deployed. The only one still moving. It wasn't hunting. It wasn't tracking. It was delivering. Commander Rhea stood beside a glass wall as a shuttle passed low over the tundra. What is it carrying? Asked an aide. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked at the final report on her tablet. Coalition capital status. Dissolved civilian evacuation corridors. Established last hostile broadcast. 47 hours ago. Below that, the AI summary ended with a final sentence. Galactic hostilities have ceased not because they surrendered, but because they stopped speaking altogether. Reyes tapped the tablet off. They always assumed we'd speak last, she said. The aide tilted his head. Didn't we? Reyes turned. No, she said softly. We spoke first, in silence. And now they understand the language. On. A drifting research vessel once belonging to the Dominion, a group of war analysts replayed intercepted footage from the first Earth counterstrike. 100 coalition ships folding space, preparing to bombard Earth's low-orbit platforms. Torchbearer arriving, not flaring, not targeting, just blinking into place. Then, a lightless pulse. No color, no noise. Just an internal burn system shutting down from inside out. Shields reversed. AI cores collapsed under what looked like their own logic failing. One analyst paused the feed. What was that? The room was silent. Another analyst murmured, "Not a weapon." Then what? A correction. They looked at each other, not like enemies, but like people who'd seen a god and realized it wasn't angry. Just tired. Above a desert world in Sector L92, a ship appeared for 7 seconds. Locals recorded it. Farmers stopped harvesting. Children stopped playing. The black wedge of steel and starless plating hovered above the skyline like a question. The planet wasn't brave enough to ask. Then, across every screen on the world, a message blinked. We do not demand obedience. We only remember what you forgot. And then the ship vanished. It left no crater, no monument. Just a sense of being seen. That was enough. In a back room of a neutral station, a former mercenary placed his plasma rifle on the table and pushed it away. "I'm done." His second-in-command frowned. "Since when did you quit?" "Breathing fire?" He looked up with a haunted expression. "I saw one, not a fleet. One. So?" "I couldn't hear anything while it passed." "So?" "It wasn't even angry," he whispered. "It just moved, and space moved with it." He reached for a drink, handshaking. They weren't defending Earth. He looked straight at her. They were protecting memory. And we made the mistake of becoming part of what they remember. Aboard the UN's Vigilant, Shipmind 11 initiated the final procedure. All war logs, all combat reviews, every erased target, the entire history of this silent war was encrypted, compressed, and converted into a stardust signal meant to disintegrate. Mid-trajectory. There would be no archive. No legacy. Because humanity didn't need the galaxy to remember. They remembered. For it, the Vigilant's last act was one of closure, not victory. A brief message encoded in ancient Morse, sent in all directions, bouncing off dead moons and forgotten satellites. It is done. We asked for peace. You taught us silence. We answered in your language. Goodbye. Then the Vigilant powered down its beacon and was never seen again. On Earth, the Hall of Memory dimmed one final time. Every name that had ever appeared there, lost children, broken diplomats, unarmed stations, collapsed relief transports, blinked. In unison, one last light sequence, one last moment of reverence. Commander Reyes stood. Alone in the center. She whispered, "Your names weren't numbers." And then turned away. No applause followed. No anthem. Just silence. The kind the galaxy finally understood, because now they knew Earth never needed fleets to speak. They needed only to be forgotten once, and they would never let it happen again. The Zarnathi High Command laughs off rumors of an ancient human warship that supposedly never existed. But as their fleet begins its final assault, an anomaly appears, something that shouldn't be real, moving without propulsion, casting no shadow, and bringing with it a silence that cracks even the loudest arrogance. "Humans don't build legends," scoffed General Karvok, tail twitching as laughter circled the oval war table. "They build scrap piles and make documentaries about failure." The chamber was carved from obsidian and polished bone, filled with light from stars they already owned. 12 systems had fallen in the last cycle. The humans had retreated again, as expected. No fleet, no declarations, just silence. And yet, someone had brought it up again. The myth, A Terran warship unnamed in records, unseen in centuries. A rumor. A bedtime tale for colonies under siege. The kind of thing soldiers whispered about before their planets were glassed. "They call it the Midnight Gale," said a junior tactician. The room stilled briefly, then the chuckles resumed. "Of course they do," sneered Admiral Relvik. "What kind of warship leaves no data, no heat, no signature, just shows up when it wants?" "Fairy tales," muttered another. Karvok nodded. "Even Earth doesn't believe it exists. It's a myth because they needed one. To pretend. They still mattered." He tapped a claw on the battle map. "Tomorrow, we strike Proxima Outpost directly. No delays, no mercy, no ghosts." The war room dimmed as a tactical simulation lit the floor. Zarnathi fleets surrounding the human perimeter, breaching every orbital defense, crushing the last Terran colony on the edge of the veil. 3 hours. Then we extinguished the last. Lie they have. He turned away, didn't notice the pulse that flickered on the long-range sensors behind him, didn't hear the technician whisper, "What is that?" The first thing the fleet noticed was the silence, not absence of sound. Silence, but pressure silence, like the kind right before a collapse. The lead battleship, Requiem Fang, pinged an anomaly at 4.7 astronomical units just off trajectory. A distortion. No. Mass signature. No warp flare. Just. Darkness. Something absorbing space. And moving through it. Voice crackled through the command net. Scout Group Delta, confirm contact on sector. Then static. Hard static. Followed by something worse. Nothing. Coms. Dead. Visual scrambled. A single line returned across all ship logs. We were never gone. And then it arrived, not in light, not in thunder, but in absence. A void, 10 kilometers wide, sliding through the fleet like smoke through a graveyard. Shaped like a dagger made from swallowed. Stars. No weapons ports. No engines. No markings. Only one. Visible symbol carved deep into its left flank. UN's Midnight GLE. Admiral Relvik's voice cracked as he whispered, "That ship doesn't exist." And the warship answered, "Not with missiles. Not with beams, but with motion. It pivoted once. Reality. Groan. And 5 battleships ceased. Not exploded. Ceased. As if a page had been torn from reality. Someone screamed, "Return fire!" But their systems didn't respond, because they weren't jammed. They'd already lost. Gale didn't threaten, didn't explain that it moved again, and 10 more ships vanished behind it. The human transmission returned one last time across every deck, every comm line, every terrified breath. You made us myths. Now we're memory. And that was before Earth even responded. The aftermath wasn't silence. It was awe. The midnight. Gale had moved through the Zarnathi fleet like wind, through a brittle forest. Ships that once glowed with pride now spun aimlessly, hulls split, systems dark, crews screaming into comms that no longer worked. Not a single human vessel had followed. No backup. No fleet. Just the Gale, the warship no one believed in, and now no one could forget. Admiral Relvik stood on the shattered command deck of the Requiem Fang, blood trickling down the side of his temple. Sparks hissed from broken control pylons as emergency klaxons pulsed like a heartbeat about to fail. "Where is it?" he asked, voice hoarse. A junior officer, pale and blinking through plasma burns, stared at the holomap. "Gone, sir. It vanished." "Not possible. Track the distortion wake." We tried. "It didn't leave one." Relvik gripped the edge of the console, knuckles straining. "Then what did it leave?" The officer hesitated. And pointed. Outside the shattered viewport, floating gently through debris, was a single shard of metal. Not glowing, not Marked. Just scorched. As if it had passed through the sun and survived. Their drones recovered it 5 minutes later. It bore a single phrase, engraved in the Terran alphabet, no translation needed. We are not the myth. You are the memory. Relvik collapsed to one knee. Not from pain. From understanding. Back on Earth, the Hall of Memory remained dark. It had been silent since the Gale departed. No reports filed. No celebration broadcast. No names added to the wall. Commander Thorne stood alone, watching the list of known enemy admirals scroll across the glass. Most had already been removed, not killed, just forgotten. They never made it home. He tapped the glass once. Did we go too far? From the darkness, the AI embedded in the floor answered gently, no farther than they did. He turned, but no one asked us to become gods. Then perhaps. It replied, they shouldn't have created the devil first. Thorne didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He simply said, update status. Zarnathi High Command, dissolved. Remaining fleets, fractured. Civilian sectors, untouched. Midnight. Gale, location unknown. Transmission logs, ended. He nodded. Good. Across the galaxy, children whispered stories again. But now, no one laughed at them. No one rolled their eyes. No one called Earth primitive. Because now, even the most arrogant fleets had burned, and even the strongest generals had kneeled. Every system that had mocked Earth's quiet now built border stations not to defend from ships, but from shadows. One diplomat said it best, they didn't arrive with war. They arrived with memory. On a cold mining station in the Orion Belt, a bartender served 2 off-duty patrol officers staring at a static cracked holoscreen. The footage played on loop, grainy, shaky, captured from the last working drone aboard the Krellian Storm. Just 30 frames, a blur of black. A hall without angles, a shadow that cut light. The bartender leaned over. You know what that is? One of the soldiers shrugged. They say it's Earth's secret fleet. The other chuckled, dry and nervous. I heard it's just one ship. And it's not secret, it's selective. The bartender wiped the counter, then leaned in. Doesn't matter how many. He nodded toward the screen. It's not the ship you should be afraid of. Both soldiers frowned. Then what? The bartender gave a tired smile. The silence that follows. Somewhere far beyond official charts, in a quiet band of interstellar dust, the midnight gale slept. No transmissions. No course. Just waiting. Inside. Its system cycled through encrypted names. Not of enemies, not of targets, but of those who were lost. Unheard. Erased. Every movement it made was in their honor. Every strike a correction. And the galaxy finally understood they weren't facing ships. They were facing myths that fought back. This warship had once been a fairy tale. Now it was prophecy.